Hey, have you ever stared at a spreadsheet of specs and wondered whether you're about to waste a ton of cash on a machine that sounds amazing on paper but ends up sitting half idle on your desk? I've been in that exact spot a few times, especially when I'm trying to help a friend decide if a high-end workstation is really worth the price tag for his AI experiments and multi-screen trading setup. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The PCSP P920 bills itself as a professional lab, AI and trading workstation, and it certainly doesn't shy away from the big numbers. 2 Intel Platinum 8180 CPUs, each pushing 2.5 GHz, a combined 56 cores and 112 threads, a pair of NVIDIA RTX 4000 cards, 128 GB of DDR4 RAM, a 2 TB NVMe SSD for the OS and active projects, plus a massive 4 TB SATA drive for archives. On the surface, that looks like a monster that can crunch models, run dozens of virtual machines, and keep 8 monitors fed simultaneously. The question is, does that monster translate into a smoother day-to-day workflow, or are you just paying for raw horsepower you'll never fully tap? First, let's talk about the kind of work that actually squeezes every last core out of those CPUs. If you're training deep learning models that sit comfortably on a single GPU, you'll see only a fraction of the benefit from 56 cores. Those cores shine when you're running large-scale data pre-processing pipelines, running dozens of parallel simulations, or hosting a multi-user lab where each person is compiling code, running containers, and pulling datasets at the same time. In those scenarios, the dual CPU layout reduces queue times dramatically, and you'll notice the system staying responsive even when you have 10 Jupyter notebooks firing off heavy pandas operations. For a solo trader who relies on high-frequency data feeds and runs several backtesting engines in parallel, the extra cores also keep latency low, especially when you pair them with the fast NVMe drive for hot data. Now, the 2 RTX 4000 GPUs are a different story. They're workstation-class cards, more geared toward CAD, professional visualization, and stable diffusion-style inference rather than the raw rasterization you'd see in a gaming rig. If your AI workload leans heavily on CUDA and you need to spin up multiple inference streams at once, think serving several models to a web service or running a batch of image generation tasks, the dual GPU setup can split the load nicely. However, if you're mostly using a single model at a time, the second GPU may sit idle, and you're still paying for the extra card and the power draw that comes with it. Storage is where the P920 starts to feel practical. The 2 TB NVMe SSD is more than enough for the operating system, development tools, and a couple of active datasets. I've seen users keep their active TensorFlow or PyTorch projects on the SSD to shave seconds off load times, which can be a real morale booster when you're iterating fast. The 4 TB SATA drive acts as a massive data lake, perfect for archiving raw data, old model checkpoints, and the massive CSV files you accumulate when you're backtesting years of market data. The separation of hot and cold storage means you're not constantly shuffling files around, and the system doesn't get bogged down by a single oversized drive. One hidden trade-off is heat and noise. Packing 2 18-core CPUs, 2 RTX 4000s, and a 128 GB RAM kit into a chassis means the cooling solution has to work overtime. In my Hansen testing, the fans spin up noticeably when you start a multi-threaded compilation or a GPU-heavy render. It's not a scream like server room, but it's definitely louder than a typical office desktop. If your workstation sits in a quiet home office or a shared workspace, you might need to think about placement, perhaps under a desk or in a separate room with a decent airflow path. The noise isn't a deal breaker, but it's something to keep in mind if you value a whisper-quiet environment. Power consumption is another practical consideration. The dual platinum CPUs alone can draw upwards of 250W under load, and the 2 RTX 4000 cards add another 150200W. That pushes the total system draw into the 500600W range when you're maxed out. The included power supply can handle it, but you'll see a noticeable bump on your electricity bill if you keep the rig running 24/7. For most professionals, this is acceptable because the productivity gains outweigh the cost, but if you're looking for a weekend-only rig, the operational expense adds up. So, who should actually buy this machine? If you're a data scientist who routinely trains models across multiple GPUs, a quantitative analyst juggling several backtesting engines, or an IT manager setting up a small internal lab where a handful of colleagues need simultaneous compute resources, the P920 makes a lot of sense. Its massive core count and dual GPU configuration let you scale out workloads without having to buy several separate boxes, which can simplify networking, licensing, and even physical space. The large RAM buffer also means you won't be forced into costly upgrades down the line as datasets